Well, technically a little early. 6:29 according to my laptop.
Oh.
So timely.
According to my phone as well. It's the
Yeah, I got the blinds. Dismiss timer. I am starting the stream. You don't need to remind me to start the stream anymore. Hello, everybody. Hello, Savvy. Hello, Michelle. We just fed Pepper, so he's not here right now, but hopefully you'll get to see him before the end of the stream. Right, well, welcome to another installment of the Isolated Literary Society presents Cowboy Feng, Space Bar and Grille.
Woo.
Let's see. Yesterday we dealt with Christian, the musician that Susie introduced Billy to, finding out the truth about our intrepid team and about Fangs, and maybe not believing it. That is the question, I suppose. And also Susie has left town. Probably. I think that's kind of get y'all caught up. I don't know if SD managed to get caught up, but I figure if she did not, she has the whole weekend to get caught up on the videos before Monday, and maybe she'll be back on Monday. I don't know if she's going to be here today. Doesn't look like she's here right now. So, I updated the playlist last night after the stream, so new songs are in the playlist. I'm just going to text my sister. Because it would be like a real shame if she got like all caught up and then got, distracted, wrapped up in a project or something like that and lost track of time and then missed this one.
Yeah.
That would be very sad.
Yeah.
But, it's fine. How's everyone doing? I hope everyone's having a good day. Everybody's ready for more book. I was just looking at the spine of this book is starting to kind of peel off. I might need to put a little tape on there. So it's a well-loved copy, as you can see. It has been read many, many times.
Have you thought about getting an updated or just a new one?
Well, I mean, this the mass paperback is out of print, and I don't like trade paperbacks, the bigger ones. It was reprinted as a trade, which that's nice. And I am kind of curious to get a copy of it, or at least get my hands on a copy of it, because I just want to know if there were any updates to the song list, any of the things. It occurred to me yesterday. I can't remember if I said this on the stream or I thought about it afterwards, but I wonder if anybody ever reached out to Steven, because I haven't talked about this on the stream yet. But at the end of the book, I was planning to read it when we got to the end of the book. There is a list of the songs quoted, not the ones that are mentioned in the text, but just the ones that are quoted at the chapter headings. And then a note on traditional songs from Steven Brust, talking about, the note of the nature, rather, of what does it mean for a song to be traditional and kind of the nature of folk music. So I almost said fake music. Anyway, in the note, he invites people to contact him through his publisher if, in fact, they know that one of the songs he listed as traditional is they actually know who the author is. So it is because it's very, very common for folk songs in the folk style that are not true folk songs in the sense that they did not just get passed around by folk. Those a lot of times folk songs that are written or songs written in the style of a traditional folk song will get passed around and credited as traditional in various places, even though they are not. Caroline and I just last night were talking about the song the Scotsman, also known as the Drunken Scotsman or the Scotsman's Kilt, which was a parody of traditional folk songs written in the 80s. If you hear the original version of it, the original recording sounds very much like a kind of Dr. Demento, very goofy sort of parody, style parody. However,
little did they know
yeah,
what Scottish drinking songs are like.
Yeah. But yeah, if you apparently it became rather popular, I've heard, among Irish musicians because it sort of makes fun of a Scottish person.
I'm pretty sure the version I've heard was done by the Irish Rovers.
Yeah, makes sense. So anyway, when I first learned it, I was told it was a traditional, and when I looked up the lyrics and everything online, I saw nothing to dissuade me to that fact. And it wasn't until later that I learned, nope, written by a guy named Mike something, forgetting his name right now. But anyway, sometime in the 80s. Anyway, that's enough rambling, giving people time to come to the stream. Let's get into it. All right. Just for Aaron, Christian found out about the people, what's going on with Fangs. Susie is out of town. That's where we are.
And we know what Sugar Bear is, sort of.
Well, we just have the beginnings of knowing what Sugar Bear is.
We've started to know a little bit.
That night, I went back to Fangs to catch Pan's Dream, and I thought they were good. The flute player was especially hot. Between sets, I talked to the skinny guy whose name was Luke. He suggested I get together with his band sometime to jam, and I complimented him on the band, and he explained how badly they were doing that night, and later I found myself in a back corner booth drinking soda and listening until the music was over. The guy running the soundboard for them was a large, bearded man with long hair, a bald spot, and a pot belly. He was pretty good, too, surprisingly good for how much cheap whiskey he consumed. When they were done, I remained in back drinking orange juice and charged water while they packed up and left. Libby saw me, correctly deduced that I didn't want company, and left me alone. When the place finally closed, she turned the lights out without saying a word. The room became very quiet. The stage creaked occasionally as it recovered from the abuse suffered earlier. The ventilation system softly hummed the D below middle C. We've checked. From time to time, my glass thunked on the table. I decided I should probably have been drinking scotch to get the full dramatic effect from the moment, but it was better that I didn't. After about 45 minutes of feeling good and sorry for myself, I got up, walked outside, and found myself face to face with the short guy named Claude, whom I'd seen earlier that day at Le Bureau. He was dressed in dark clothes and had something in his hand. After a moment, it resolved itself into a large canister. We stared at each other for a moment, then he dropped it and ran. I smelled kerosene. I don't remember deciding to chase him, but I must have because I did. It was a foolish idea. He knew the city. I didn't. He was probably in better shape than I was, and I had no idea what I was going to do if I caught him, but chase him I did. Down the middle of the street, then around a building where he hid, hoping I'd pass him, but I didn't. So around another corner, smack into blinding lights. A car? No, a security light. Then he's running that way, towards the door to a bar, and I think past it. The wind catches in my throat, and I can't breathe for just a moment, tears in my eyes. Someone opened a door, but no, not that way, around to the left. And was that him going through that window? Good thing this place is empty. Feet echoing, slap, slap, up a flight of stairs. I can hear him, glass breaking out the window, down to land, rolling, 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 broken glass on my shoulder. Makes me happy from an alley looks like fucking New York City. He must be out of breath by now. Good, I wish I could get more air into my lungs, and my legs are so heavy, so heavy. Where did he go now? I can't see the runner for the tears. And he's turned down this... He stopped. Why? He thinks he's lost me. Shit, I said aloud, and leaned against a building for a while, breathing in gasps. I could practically feel him on the other side of a garbage dumpster, maybe 20 feet away from me. I pushed away from the wall after a while and started walking, trying very hard to walk quietly so he wouldn't think it was odd when he could no longer hear my footsteps after about 30 paces, when I stopped, listened, and heard his. I set out after him once more, carefully this time. I mostly stayed hidden, and once I caught him looking back over his shoulder, but I was pretty well concealed in the shadow of a church of some sort. Appropriate, if you like. I never saw him look back after that, so I assume he never saw me. Eventually, he left the city proper, and I fell even further back as we walked along a dirt road. I could just barely see him as he came to a very tall house all done up in Victorian clothes, from which light came streaming out to collect in puddles on the road. The house was very big and formed a nice silhouette against the sunset. I decided it would have made someone a very fine haunted house, from what I could see of the towers. Perhaps it had gables. Perhaps it had gables. I don't know what a gable is. Sorry, I just noticed that Esty had responded to me. She's just going to catch up this weekend, so that's fine. It had funny things that looked decorative built up around the towers, and if they weren't gables, they should have been, because it was that sort of house. There was an iron fence, the fence set into a low wall. It made me wonder, suddenly and perhaps irrelevantly, what this indicated about the economics of the person or the colony. But I had no idea if skilled craftsmen were plentiful or iron was rare, so it really told me nothing. I hid behind the wall and watched as Claude knocked on the door and was admitted. I got no glimpse of the person on the inside. I made a note of the house number and the name of the road, and I left. It took me a long time to find my way home, and I might still be looking if I hadn't found the river and correctly guessed that we were downstream from my apartment. The walk home helped settle nerves that badly needed settling. I stopped by Feng's and removed the canister that did, in fact, contain kerosene. I held it for a while, thinking. A killing, a bomb, and this. The killing was successful, the bomb prevented by Rich's alertness, and by luck, the burning by luck alone. I opened the place up and stored the kerosene inside Feng's for lack of anywhere else to bring it, and because one never knows when one might need 2 or 3 gallons of kerosene to burn down a Victorian mansion or something. When I woke up, it was early afternoon of a beautiful Sunday, tra-la, tra-la. Out the window of my bedroom, past lacy curtains left by Mr. and Mrs. previous occupant. That's very presumptuous of you, Billy.
Yes.
Could have been a single person. Roommates. A Monster Elm, earth variety, held the ground together and the sky up, and neatly bisected the unkempt green terraced and dirty pine-fenced backside of a New Quebec residential district. The tree had to be damn near the full 60 years old that it could be. Can you imagine that? Land on a planet and start planting elms. Every once in a while, I think the human race is worth saving after all. As I lay there that afternoon making deep, melancholy, and philosophical reflections, it came to me that this last bit, the one about saving the human race, wasn't totally out of the question. That is, whoever had blown up Earth could have had that in mind. A frightening thought, if an unlikely one. It would certainly explain the way the wars followed people around. But who, I subvocalized, would want to destroy the human race anyway? I considered this carefully, in part because it took my mind off wondering about Susie. The more I thought about it, the odder it seemed. I did not consider myself any sort of expert on the human animal, and I'd never made a study of psychology, or maybe I'd have been able to make some sort of intelligent guess. I tried to build a picture in my mind of the sort of maniac who would be seriously trying to destroy humanity, and what his motives would be. Religious? Maybe. But what religion? I could suggest the idea to Eve, who enjoyed looking things up in libraries. Maybe she'd learn something, and then I could... What? I sighed and studied a knot in the elm. In wood, it's called a knot. In metal, it's called a flaw. Because somewhere we decided that man is fallible and nature is not. The first proposition seems intuitively obvious. The second is dubious. As I studied this knot and made cynical observations about humanity and myself, I decided the fact that I had no idea what to do about any of the dilemmas I faced the fact that I had no idea what to do about any of the dilemmas I found myself amid. But I had to know. Maybe, probably, because the alternative was to wonder about her, but the reason didn't matter. There it was, and I was going to act on it because I needed to act. But first I would deal with those aspects of reality that rudely forced themselves upon my consciousness. That is, I got out of bed and used the bathroom. An hour later, showered, shaved, with notes left behind me to who may be concerned, I set out walking toward a large mansion. The notes detailed what I had discovered, gave the location of the mansion, and what I planned to do. I mailed it to Libby, care of Cowboy Feng, figuring I could get to them before it was opened and tell them all this in person, if I survived. It is certainly the case that I am a coward, but there was an air of uncertainty about this threat that made it easy to deny it, to just go do what I wanted to do without really thinking about it. Whatever happened, I expected it to be interesting. The place was more impressive in the daylight. It was big and white, with red trim around the windows that should have made it look more garish than it did. All the paint was new. All the edges and corners were sharp. The door was big and wood and had an ornate brass knocker that belonged there. I used it and waited more than a minute. The door opened with a thoughtful creaking and a slowness that would have been more appropriate in a Mel Brooks parody of a horror movie than in the real thing. When it opened and I was able to get a look at the man who opened it, I knew at once that this was not the butler I'd more than half expected, though I cannot point to precisely how I knew. He stood half a head taller than I. His face was heavily jowled, heavily browed, and quite ruddy. His hair was curly and completely gray. He wore black and white, including a very long black dinner jacket with, apparently, velvet lapels. Jama would have looked great wearing it on stage. Other than his white shoes, I thought him fairly well dressed. I hate people who wear white shoes. Sorry if I'm stepping on any toes, so to speak, but it's a prejudice. Don't get me started on Trans Ams. He studied me with an expression of mild curiosity, as if I were selling encyclopedias. Yeah, if I were selling encyclopedias, he would ask me to leave politely, but without room for argument. I tried to forget the white shoes. He said, "Oui, monsieur?" His voice was very rich and full, the sort of voice one enjoys listening to. "Parlez-vous English?" I managed with some work. "Indeed," he said. "How may I help you?" Clipped, yet distinctly more American than, say, British. East Coast, perhaps. Perhaps not. "I'm looking for the master or mistress of this house. My name is Cavalli." As I said my name, his brow went up and my heart dropped approximately the same distance. "William Francis Cavalli, is it not?" he said. "Or Billy, as your friends call you." I'm trying for a mid-Atlantic accent. That seems like the way he described it sounds like the way someone would describe a mid-Atlantic accent if they didn't know what it was called. My voice was dry, but fortunately did not crack. "That is correct." "Please come in, Mr. Cavalli. This is my home. My name is Harold Peter Rudd. You will understand if I do not offer to shake hands." A pleasure, Monsieur Rudd." "The pleasure is mine, Mr. Cavalli." I crossed the threshold into an L-shaped entryway with coat closets on either side and a mirror straight ahead. He helped me with my leather jacket, where it found a home between something white and furry and something long and tweedy. I think it was supposed to feel honored. Out of the L and into the land of high ceilings and a fireplace in a big sitting room where we were surrounded by books that didn't look red, a fireplace that did look used, and light-colored wood paneling. I didn't see any speakers, but they could have been concealed. 2 chairs sat in the middle looking lost, facing each other at an oblique angle. They were probably Louis the something or other. When he gestured me into one, I was surprised that it was comfortable. "Brandy, Mr. Cavalli?" he said. Of course. I wondered how much he was playing a role. A silly question phrased that way. The room echoed as he spoke. The whole thing was pretty spooky and rather surreal at the same time. "No thanks, I'm fine." I really wasn't. I was wearing jeans and a black t-shirt that said "The Flying Karamazov Brothers. There's more to the theater than repetition." Such things don't usually bother me, but on that occasion, I really wanted to be wearing my nice white-on-white shirt with French cuffs and the jeans with the holes in the knees. Oh well. He sat facing me at that oblique angle I mentioned earlier. My left eye could watch him while my right eye could look at the cold fireplace. He relaxed, his feet stretched out in front of him, crossed at the ankles, and his hands in the pockets of his jacket. His eyebrows were as gray as his hair. He noticed me looking at the fireplace and said, "Should I start a fire, Mr. Cavalli?" "I don't think that'll be necessary, Monsieur Rudd." "Very well." He cleared his throat. "I must say, I didn't expect to run into you." "I came chasing bears," I said. "Ah, of course." He smiled. In another context, I would not have taken it for an evil smile. "Any particular bear?" "We could start with the one who tried to burn down Cowboy Feng's last night. Claude, isn't it?" "So it was you, and he didn't lose you." "It was, and he didn't. He was afraid of that." "And we can go from there to whoever tried to blow it up earlier. Claude again, I think, or perhaps Justin." "You know a great deal." I waited for him to say "more than is good for you" or something like that. When he didn't, I said, "I don't know as much as you do, or as much as I'd like to." I decided to make what I thought was a reasonable guess at that point. "For example," I said, I don't know why you had someone shot at the restaurant, or who he was to begin with, or, in fact, exactly who shot him. Rudd nodded, his mouth twitching. A very expressive mouth it was, too. You must understand, Mr. Cavalli, that we are far from perfect. We? Sugar Bear? Well, yes. We are dedicated people, but we are not killers, save by necessity. This was necessary? You misunderstand. I'm explaining that we bungled. More particularly, I bungled. I should have had a photograph, but, well, he spread his hands. I didn't. I relied on a verbal description, and there was an unfortunate man who met the description. I do feel bad, although no doubt he was diseased as well, so there was no real loss. Oh. I cleared my throat. This raised more questions than I could handle at one time. I started with, if it was a stranger who was shot, why did he die saying Sugar Bear? This time, Rudd's whole face twitched. I told you, we are not professionals. The gunman told him, I don't know exactly how, I suspect he said, the Sugar Bear has found you, you scoundrel, prepare to die, or words to that effect. Oh, in English? It is still our native tongue, although we have come a long way in space, and through many generations. I see. Well, in that case, who was he supposed to have killed? Oh, come now, Mr. Cavalli. I blinked, and as I did, the photographer in my mind reconstructed the dead man, and the stenographer who works in the same department rattled off a verbal description from the photo, which came out something like about 5'7" or 5'8", big nose, long black hair, black drooping mustache. I knew at once who else fit, and I realized at a quite visceral level just how stupid it had been for me to walk into this place, unarmed and alone. So he handles it very subtly, and I think I got it on first reading, but I don't know if everyone else gets that it is Billy himself who fits that description.
I assume so after that.
Yeah, okay.
Have we had a physical description of him before?
It's always been pretty vague because he's a narrator.
That's true.
So he's not describing himself, although he has mentioned other people having long mustaches and said, like mine.
Yeah.
So we knew that part, that he had kind of a long mustache.
Yeah.
Other than that, we didn't really have much of a description. So I was just like, I hope everybody gets that. It's kind of important to understand.
Yeah.
I think it
seems pretty obvious.
Seems pretty obvious? Okay, good. If you think it seems obvious, it's just sometimes when you've read a book enough times, you start to go, did I get that on first reading? That is a little bit subtle. It's not explicit at any rate. But I guess him saying, I knew how stupid I'd been to come there completely alone and unarmed makes it pretty obvious. But anyway.
It seemed to be implied as soon as Mr. Rudd or whatever his name is said, oh, come now. And then
that's true.
And then he starts thinking about it and you're like, okay, this is going to build up too.
Yeah.
Like, okay, what else would it be?
I'm glad.
I just was pausing to be
like,
got
it too.
I don't know that I had a mental picture of him, but it wasn't quite that. So I wasn't sure.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is that if you happen to have a different mental picture of him, even if you thought that's where it was headed, you might go like, wait, is it Billy? It's Billy, right?
And you're right. Yeah. I'm like, for some reason I didn't know. Yeah.
Anyway.
Hadn't pictured him that way.
Okay. We have another intermezzo. When I was young, I had no sense. I bought a fiddle for 18 pence. The only tune that I could play was Over the Hills and Very Far Away. When I was young, traditional. She took another hit off her cigarette and blew out the smoke in a long, thoughtful stream, watched it swirl across the booth towards the empty table next to her, and remembered the night before. She tried to form it into words for herself, failed. How can happiness be put into words? Problems she didn't even know she had were whisked away, vanished, gone. It was better than anything she'd tried before. Acid, coke, anything. Love? A joke, that. Love was the problem, not the solution. Being hit by a car was better than love. She took another sip of coffee. Tony had promised to have more tonight if she wanted it, and Tony could usually be relied on. Well, if you're going to break skin, there's no point in not enjoying it. Snatches of songs came to her, dancing in the ear of her mind, making melodic suggestions to counterpoint the smoke swirls. She suddenly wished she had her fiddle and that she knew how to play it. Maybe she'd start practicing again. She took another sip of coffee, another hit off the cigarette, exhaled, and watched the smoke. Spooky. Scary. She liked that. She stubbed out her cigarette and filled her coffee cup from the tacky green pitcher the all-night restaurant served coffee in. She played with cream containers she didn't use and thought about it. Doesn't it bother me that I'm shooting heroin? And yes, it does. She lit another smoke and stared at nothing. It's me, Rose. Not some junkie. It's me. She saw it then. This was to be her life. She'd watched Tony burn his brain out and turn into a vegetable, and Julie would get quieter and quieter until she shut down altogether, and Margaret would lose touch with reality until everything became so significant that nothing mattered, and she, Rose, would join them, and that's how it would be. They're all losers. They're going nowhere. I've got my music. That makes it different. She could stop, stay away from needles, and fill in the void with music. She shook her head. No, she could maybe stay away from the needles, but she'd still be around Julie and Margaret and Tony, and that meant being around the candy, and that meant using it. The sickly pale sun was coming through the restaurant windows. Morning already? She paid her bill and walked through the snapping winter winds, deciding that she was beginning to feel the effects of a whole night of drinking coffee. It's been a very long time since I felt that particular feeling, but I do know it well. It's just been a very long time. I perhaps have aged out of spending all night in diners. Oh,
hope Bruno's
sorry.
not
Hope Bruno's not listening, Aaron. That's the rice cooker. I should have warned you. Sorry. I thought to myself when I set the rice cooker, I should warn Aaron if he shows up. The rice cooker is going to go off at some point. Well, perhaps you have headphones in. Anyway, where was I? Oh, I was rambling about aging out of sitting all night in diners drinking coffee. She walked up the 2 flights to her apartment and let herself in. Margaret was sitting on the floor on sofa cushions. She smiled dreamily, her head on Tony's shoulder. How did you like it, Rose? Margaret asked. It's great, she said honestly. It's better than Coke. Excuse me a minute. She used the bathroom. It was small, and the sink and mirror were cracked. She splashed water on her face, then went out and picked up her fiddle case. Rose walked to the door and opened it again. Julie, who had rejoined them in the living room, said, Where are you going, hon? Rose took a deep breath and looked at the 3 of them. She said, I love you guys more than anyone or anything in the world, but I can't see you anymore. Goodbye. She shut the door quickly so they wouldn't see her tears and walked down the 2 flights of stairs to the street, clutching her fiddle case like salvation. It was very cold. All right. I love Rose. She's the best. Oh, good. Aaron has reported that Bruno is blissfully unaware of the rice cooker.
Excellent.
All right. Chapter 8. And when I'm dead, I and in my grave, a flashy funeral pray let me have, with 6 bold highwaymen to carry me, give them good broadswords and sweet liberty. The Newry Highwaymen, traditional. Startled, surprised, and shocked do not mean quite the same things. Startled is when you walk around a corner and almost bump into someone. Surprised is when you look down the block and see someone you thought was out of town. Shocked is when you walk around the corner and bump into a dead man. It is possible to control what your face does when you're shocked. It is difficult when startled, but actually fairly easy when surprised if you try. I realized that I'd just placed myself into the hands of a man who had tried to kill me. I was surprised, not startled or shocked. My mind raced, tried to come up with some means of escape, and failed. I was going to have to just play it by ear and hope my mouth could think clearer than my brain. So, where were we? Yes. He assumed I knew he was trying to kill me. Of course, I said. You do not, continued Monsieur Rudd, have a listening or recording device upon your person, or it would have been detected when you entered my home. Similarly, you do not have a weapon. Thus, I conclude that you are here neither to trick me into saying something you will record to use against me in some way, here he smiled, as if the notion was amusing, nor to attempt violence against my person. I'm curious. Why are you here? I'm afraid you will have to remain curious for the moment.
That's always a good answer.
Right?
It's better than saying, I don't know.
Better not tell you now.
Wouldn't you like to know?
He frowned, the disapproving look of a stern parent. Come now, Mr. Cavalli. I answered all of your questions. You could at least tell me why you have come. To get the answers to those questions you've just answered. Rubbish, he said. I haven't told you anything you didn't already know, or couldn't have discovered, or even guessed. All right, if you really haven't told me anything, why should I tell you anything in exchange? He laughed, and it seemed quite genuine. Very good, Mr. Cavalli. He shifted in the chair, crossed his ankles the other way. Well then, is there something I can tell you that you didn't already know? Sure. Who exactly do you work for, and what are your goals? His eyebrows climbed once more. I work for the physician, as I'm certain you are aware, and we are attempting to cure the patient. You should know that. You are part of the disease. I am? You are? It is why it is necessary to surgically remove you. Ah, as I am certain you realize, I don't look at it quite that way. That is irrelevant, no doubt. Can you be more, Oh, wait, what? Hold on. This is one of the things where they stop saying who's talking, and either they forgot or you did. He says I work for the physician. Billy says I am. Mr. Rudd says you are. Billy says I don't look at that way. Mr. Rudd says that's irrelevant. Billy says no doubt. Damn it. And then the next line is also Billy. It's just just a typo, I guess. They put a quote where there shouldn't have been one. Anyway, Can you be more specific about this disease or what the cure for it might be? He stared at me speculatively. No, I don't think so, he said. But that does bring something to mind. Perhaps you could tell me something. He pulled his right hand from his jacket pocket. Why in this world should I not simply kill you now and have done with it? I never had a gun pointed at me before. The novelty of the experience impressed me more than the particulars of the weapon, so if you're one of those who are curious about such things, you'll have to be content with my impression that it was a small blue automatic. My unease notwithstanding, I'd been more or less expecting this ever since I realized who the dead man looked like. I'm proud to say I didn't bat an eyelash or miss a beat. I held his gaze and said, What would you have done before walking in here? He stared at me, his eyes narrow, and I bet he would have traded several weeks out of his future allotment of paradise to know what I was thinking. Then his eyes widened and his face broke out into a smile. Ah, he said. I see. Very good. A stalemate. I think so. You are a brave man, Mr. Cavalli. You are a clever man, Monsieur Rudd. He bowed his head and stood, still pointing the gun at my stomach. Under the circumstances, I'm afraid I must ask you to leave. As you wish, I said. It has been a pleasure meeting you. And you as well. He conducted me to the door and opened it. I looked out at a piece of rural New Quebec. Except for the smell of livestock, it was not materially different from my piece of residential New Quebec. It smelled of freedom and safety out there, as well as of horses and goats, and I badly wanted to bolt. Mr. Rudd still had the gun in his hand, although it was no longer pointed at me, so I held myself still and tried to act calm. No doubt, he said, we shall meet again before everything is settled. I expect we shall. My compliments to the physician. And mine to Mr. Feng. Indeed. I walked out onto the street at last. My legs, bless their souls, held me steady until I was a good mile away from Rudd's. I didn't stop there, but I did not allow myself the twin luxuries of letting my knees shake and looking over my shoulder once or twice a minute from there until I reached the door of Cowboy Feng's. As I walked, amazed and delighted that I continued to breathe and that my heart continued to beat, which it did, and made sure I knew about it too. I wondered what in the world he thought I had on him that had prevented him from killing me. If I could figure it out, I might do so again. Oh, I wish I don't know which part you commented. This is such a great exchange, but all the dialogue between the two of them is pretty good. I do especially like my compliments to the physician and mine to Mr. Feng. Although part of the reason I really enjoy that exchange will have to be revealed later.
Well, it certainly gives you a bit of a clue.
Feng's was almost empty, it being between the lunch and supper rushes. Before supper? Still before supper? Amazing how time stands still when your life is in danger. I sat where I could watch the door, and I ordered some coffee in order to calm down. It didn't work, but I don't think a Valium would have either, right then. Aaron says it was the general comment. Yes. Well, it's all, yeah, the whole scene between the two of them is pretty great. Billy is pretty good at playing clever, even when he has no idea what the fuck's going on. Oh, we should all be so lucky. Rich showed up a bit later. He took one look at me and said, "What happened?" "It's a long story," I said. "Is Eve still at the library?" "Yeah." "Well, here's some current stuff for her to look into if she wants. Harold Peter Rudd. He lives at 16 St. Marguerite Road. And here's another one. The physician. Sounds like you've had an interesting day. To paraphrase Dalkey, you damn betcha, ratface." "Who? Ugh, never mind. Tell me about it." Not now. I want to relax for a while." "Okay, I'll go talk to Eve." "All right. And Rich, keep looking over your shoulder. Be very careful. These people really would kill us." He stared at me. "You're going to have to tell me about this." "I will, Rich. Just not right now, okay? Just be careful." I've kind of always wondered about that particular little reference. There is an author named Cara Dalkey that I assume that is in reference to, because she is of the same sort of genre and time period and sort of scene as Steven Brust, as I understand it anyway. And I don't know if that's a reference to one of her books or it's like a personal joke between the two of them.
Like something she frequently said to him or something.
I don't know, but I mean, there's so many little like pop culture references sprinkled throughout this book that you could squeeze in an inside joke and no one would be the wiser.
Yeah, like what was that group that we were talking about last night? You were saying there's writers who, whenever they need to reference a music group, they use their own.
Oh, yes. Both Steven Brust and Emma Bull, another favorite of mine, were in a band called Cats Laughing.
Yes.
And I believe both of them have at different times referred to Cats Laughing in their works, particularly in the Bordertown universe. Cats Laughing is canonically a band in Bordertown. If you have never read the Bordertown books, you are missing out. It's a shared universe short story collection, and then there are a couple of novels, one of which is by Emma Bull, two of which are by her husband, Will Shetterly. All of these people are like some of my favorite authors, and just coincidentally, like they're all friends. It makes a very convenient time period and social group that I wish I could travel back in time to hang out with.
Indeed.
Specifically, the Pre-Joycean Fellowship was a name they gave themselves as like a group of writers. You might notice that in some books by these authors, they credit themselves as PJF after their names.
Interesting.
I looked it up last night because I couldn't remember who all was in it, and apparently there's at least one collection of Sandman where Neil Gaiman is credited as Neil Gaiman PJF.
Interesting.
Just a bunch of cool ass writers, like in the 80s or 90s. I don't know when the group founded, in Minneapolis, being awesome while I was much, much too young.
Yes.
Well, it's a real band, though, Aaron. It is a real band. They have real albums. I'm not entirely surprised to find out they're not on Bandcamp because all of the members are in their 50s and 60s, and they're not active anymore. But I actually, when I read the books, I thought, oh, it's a great band name. I should steal that. And then I found out, oh, no, it's already a real band.
It's actually a band.
I cannot steal it. Also, one of their songs, fun fact, if you've ever read Emma Bull's amazing novel, War for the Oaks, which is one of my favorite books of all time, the band in that book has a song called Signal to Noise, and some of the lyrics of the song are in the book, and that is, in fact, a Cats Laughing song in real life. So it's fun.
Interesting.
The one time I have written a short story about a band, all of the lyrics in it are just like lyrical snippets I came up with where I couldn't come up with a whole song.
Oh,
none of them are real songs, although I guess I could try to flesh them out, but
yeah.
I kind of wrote that before I was really writing songs. So all I could do was come up with little snippets of lyrics that sounded Plausible. That's a lot easier than coming up with a whole song. Anyway, back to the book. Jamie and Rose showed up an hour or so later, sat down next to me. "Where have you been?" said Rose. "We misted you." I didn't know anyone else who could get away with saying, "We misted you." "Oh, I was sort of busy," I said. "Wandering around, telling everyone I met about who we are, getting shot at, that sort of thing." "Are you serious?" said Jamie. "Well, I'm exaggerating a bit. Where have you been?" "Exploring the city," said Rose. "They have this big park that's full of rocks, big rocks. You can climb all over them and slide down the—" "Wait a minute," said Jamie. "I want to know what happened to you." "Oh, Aaron, the novel Aaron's writing also has a single in it that he is writing."
Ooh.
"That's smart. You release a novel. You have a song tie-in."
There you go.
I have written a short story that is about someone writing a song, and then I also wrote the song. Actually, I wrote the song first, and then I wrote the short story to explain the song. That's my song and short story, Cabbage Rose, which you can listen to on my Bandcamp, link down there. You can listen to both the song and the short story read by my dear friend Strangely, because he was a better fit for the narrator than I. Anyway, I shrugged. For some reason, I felt a reluctance to tell them about it, perhaps because I'd been so stupid in walking into it. "Never mind. Where's Tom?" "Depressed," said Jamie, as if the word tasted bad. "Huh? About what? What do you think?" "I have no idea." "Carrie. What about her? I thought the two of them were twin songbirds upon the tree of mutual rapture, winging their way together through the forest of true love to find the—" "Ugh," said Jamie. I thought that was pretty good for a spur-of-the-moment thing. "You should be a performer," said Rose. "Nope, I just play the banjo." "Man," said Jamie. "What's the deal with Tom and Carrie?" "Oh, they spend half their time being cute at each other and the other half tearing each other to shreds." "Ah, I hadn't noticed that other half. But then I guess I've been pretty involved in my own world lately." "Shit happens," said Jamie. "You've been hanging around with Libby, haven't you?" "Yeah, and speaking with Libby." "Yes? There's something that's been on my mind for a while." "Talk to me." "Do you have any skills to speak of other than music?" "Well, that's a weird question." "Just answer it." "All right." I considered that question carefully, answering more or less honestly. "As far as I can tell, I don't even have music. If I could sing—" "I think you sing real good for a boy," said Rose, blinking. "Thanks." "I'm serious," said Jamie. "Do you really do much of anything except play banjo and sing?" I decided he didn't really intend to be insulting. I said, "Well, not really well. I sort of write songs sometimes, but not well enough that I'd list it as a skill if I was going to apply for a job." "Right. Same with me and Tom and Rose. Music is all we know as far as marketable skills go." "So what about it? It's kept us eating so far." "Did you know that Libby was hired as a paramedic and as a bartender?" "Yeah, I was there when she mentioned it. What about it?" "Did you know that Fred is a marksman and was in a Marine Corps Special Forces unit?" "Really? He seems too thin for that." "It's true. He mentioned it one night when he was drunk and coked up. It's part of the job description he applied for. He and Libby didn't get together until after they were both here." "Okay, I believe you. What about it?" "Did you know that Rich isn't just hanging around? He's employed by Fangs as a maintenance man?" "I think he mentioned that, yeah. And his girlfriend happens to speak about 6 million languages, as well as cooking, as well as Fred." "Okay, I don't see what you're getting at." "Check this out. The people here at Fangs consist of the 4 of us, who ended up here by accident, really, and 4 others who might have been handpicked to go trucking through the galaxy doing whatever it is they've been doing." I chewed this over, looking at it from several different angles. Then I said, "You have been thinking, haven't you?" "Yeah." "So you believe the 4 of us stumbled into something the 4 of them knew about, and they aren't letting us in on it because we can't be trusted? And they aren't letting us in on it because we can't be trusted, but they let us hang around because they like us? Or maybe they haven't told us yet, but they're going to. Or maybe they aren't, but they think we'll be useful. I don't know. But think about it. Isn't it a little weird? And wouldn't that explain it?" I nodded slowly. "Yes, it would." Then I smiled. You like the idea of charging through time and space battling evildoers, don't you? Well, yeah, don't you?
It's an adventure in space and time.
Not particularly, I said with complete honesty. How about you, Rose? I want whiskey, she explained. Do you think it's possible? Said Jamie, sounding excited. Maybe. If so, what do we do about it? I don't know. We could ask Rich to his face. Or Libby, she wouldn't lie to me. Are you sure? I asked. Yes, well, no. But what the hell? Do you want to ask her or should I? I will. You talk to Rich. Good enough. We'll compare notes later. Want to eat? Yeah. Food, said Rose. I wasn't especially hungry, so I settled for deep-fried mushrooms and a glass of mango juice. We have mango juice? Oh my God.
I know.
We could run out of that like day one.
Seriously.
Maybe mangoes grow really well on this planet. We don't know.
I don't know. It's every time they talk about it, it sounds really cold, but maybe
That's
has
true.
Maybe there's another part of it. We don't know how big it is.
Yeah.
It could have various regions of climates.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be one of those classic sci-fi planets that's just
where it's basically just
one. What is it called? A monoclimate or something like that. It's just like the desert planet, the ice planet. Oh, you guys!
All the planets that
look at
conveniently
this guy.
look like the Pacific Northwest because that's where we're filming.
This guy at Planet Vancouver.
Exactly.
That's where they usually go on Stargate.
Yes. Almost every time.
Oh, look at him. Look at that chin. It wants scritches.
It does.
Yeah.
Scritch is so good.
So good. Oh, good. Sorry, we had to have a little kitty time. He's just so cute. He's so cute. Yes. That's right. Okay, sorry, guys. I gotta get back to reading. Don't get mad. All right. Then we sat at the table for a while, saying little. Jamie didn't seem inclined to pick today to talk to Libby, and Rich didn't show up. At one point, I went back to talk to Libby, and I didn't mention any of Jamie's ideas to her because that was his job. Having a good day, she said. In a way, I'm alive. That's always good. It was a close thing today. She stopped moving, looked at me. Go on, she said. Last night, someone tried to burn the place down. Keep talking. And I did, leaving nothing out. She crossed her arms and listened with an intensity I could almost feel. When I finished, we spoke a little more until at last she said, oh, what a mess. Well, look, don't worry. Fred and I will take care of things. What do you mean, take care of things? Don't worry about it, all right? How can I help worrying about it? Yeah, okay, go ahead and worry. I have to figure this out. Okay, let me know if you have anything. Well, let me know when you have something. I rejoined Rose and Jamie. I said, I think you're right. What just happened? Never mind. We drank coffee until the evening rush started. Then we walked home slowly. As we went past Le Bureau, I felt my back muscles tense. I had actually wanted to leave a couple hours before, but I didn't want to walk home alone. Based on the day's experiences, I felt this was honest cowardice rather than paranoia. I resisted the impulse to keep looking over my shoulder because I didn't want to have to explain it to Rose and Jamie. It was a very long walk, but we got there and Tom was lying on a mattress in the living room, his arm over his face. He didn't look up when we walked in. I said, Hey, buddy. He moved his arm. Hello. What's new? I'm tired, he said. I nodded. Where did the mattress come from? Carrie. Oh, well, that's good. Yeah. That was all I could get out of him, but it was enough to make a point of some sort. Jamie and Rose and I exchanged glances, then we went into Jamie's room. Jamie and Rose both slept there, but it was emphatically Jamie's room. It was interesting how it had become more and more his own as the days went by. First, there was nothing but carefully folded clothing and a guitar in the corner. Then a cavalry saber, one that had been an antique when we left Earth, appeared on the wall. A few days later, he acquired a model of the spaceship in the new Quebec television serial Star Trek 3100. I wasn't sure where he'd been watching it. That seems even more plausible than Steven Brust could have known.
Yeah.
That's the kind of reference that you never know how well it's going to age.
Mm-hmm.
Like if there had never been another, like if if Voyager had killed the Star Trek franchise or Enterprise had done it, either of which could have, and there hadn't been a Star Trek show since then, and it just seemed like a dated thing now, we'd probably be like, oh, wishful thinking. But it's like, I don't know, man. There's a new animated Star Trek show that's like either just started or is about to start. I don't know how I feel about an animated comedy Star Trek. I'm not against it. I just don't know how I feel about it.
There's that, or there's Picard.
Yeah, and then there's also Picard. Yeah, there is a lot to choose from in the Star Trek universe. It is not just one thing.
Yeah.
Candles began to appear, most of them in ornate iron holders, and then a small but elegant mahogany bookcase showed up. Rich gave him a toy car, 1953 Dodge, to set on top of the bookcase, and Fred found him a leather-bound collector's copy of Conan of Samaria. Libby gave him an 8x10 topless photo of her, which took a place of honor at the head of the bed. I wondered how he explained it to his visitors. Probably didn't. Yes, Aaron. As Aaron pointed out, the show is called Lower Decks, the animated one. I do like the idea of a Star Trek show that exclusively deals with, like, the lower decks, below stairs, if you like.
Yeah, I was going to say it sounds like uptown, downstairs. Yeah,
it's because usually Star Trek shows are about, the bridge, the main officers,
right.
The most important people. I love that idea. I'm just, having seen a trailer for it, I don't know how I feel about the comedy style. Anyway, boy, I'll tell you what. I am a real collector. I like things, and even I don't know if I would have had that much stuff. How long have they been on the planet? Only like a month, right?
Really?
I guess
I can't tell.
Yeah, there's times when they, like, the first couple of days they were there felt like it was a couple of weeks because so much happened. But then he talks about him and Susie having this whole thing and going around. We don't know how long that lasted. So
yeah.
Still, that just seems like a lot of stuff. Anyway. Obviously, people tip well in New Quebec.
Yeah, and like
for him to be able to afford all that stuff,
Yeah.
Anyway, the topless photo of Libby is such a weird little touch. I'm never sure how I feel about that as like an additional like factor of Libby's personality. It doesn't not jive with what we know about Libby already. It's just like, okay,
yeah,
she did that apparently. Anyway, Jamie seated himself beneath Libby's breasts, Rose next to a model of an extinct piece of marginal technology, and myself below the sword of Damocles, and we spoke softly about many things far into the night. We spoke of travels on old Earth, people we knew and missed, music, love, and it was as good as a meal at Feng's. The next morning we were awakened at an obscene hour, like 8 o'clock, by some sort of loud buzzing noise originating from somewhere within the apartment. The operative word here is loud. It had 2 or 3 simultaneous pitches, and they were all designed to grate on the human nervous system. Jamie and I met in the hallway, he in his red terry cloth, I in red silk. Rose came out behind him, dressed in a sheet. It isn't the doorbell, she said. Tom was sitting in the living room, frowning a frown of puzzlement and staring at the kitchen, whence the noise seemed to originate. He got up, black briefs were his fashion statement, and walked into the kitchen, his arms dangling. The sound was coming from a small black plasma terminal set into the wall next to an attached handset. Right. He looked back at me. I picked up the handset, the sound stopped, and a machine-generated voice said something in French while displaying it on the screen. I strongly suspect it said we now had phone service. We now have phone service, I announced. I forgot I ordered it. The phone came with the apartment and local service doesn't cost much, so what the hell? Had we only been here a few weeks? It seemed like much longer. See, that's what I'm talking about. It was a brief enough time. It took them that long to get the phone service working. Yeah. That seems dated, but who knows what things are like in New Quebec. Apparently, cell phones were not invented in this timeline.
Yes. Or those little like holophone things.
Holophone?
Holophone.
Oh, holophone. Right.
Everybody uses in future places.
Yes. Which is a variety of cell phone. Yes. A mobile phone has apparently did not develop. But the world being nuked into oblivion in the late 80s might have an effect on the technology advancement.
It definitely might.
Oh, will it make that sound again? Said Rose. There's probably a way to change the tone or turn it off. You should find it, said Rose. That's the important thing. I understand that now. The four of us went after the instruction booklet and the question mark button on the phone. Well, the three of us. Rose made coffee and helpful comments. I suspected the instructions would have been pretty obvious if we spoke French. Fortunately, most common mistakes routed one to someone who knew what to do, so we eventually got hold of a service center representative who spoke English and filled us in on name codes, place codes, title codes, voice activation, pre-select, recall, and the rest of the details concerning the operation of the easy-to-use private band series ground-to-ground personal communication console, workstation, and dishwasher. Well, I made up the part about the dishwasher. Great, I said an hour later, feeling the same satisfaction either Joshua or Delilah must have felt when the earth moved. Now what? Sleep, suggested Jamie. Breakfast, said Rose, pronouncing it breakfast. Why don't you call someone, said Tom. Who? How about Fangs? Fred or Libby will be there. Do you know the number? What number? You hit commercial, type out COW. Oh, yeah, that's right. Should we put it in memory? You guys do that later. It's too complicated for me. I made the call, and Libby's face appeared on the screen. Cowboy Fangs, this is Libby. How can I help you? I turned on the local camera. Hi there, sex goddess. Billy, you all right? Yeah, fine. We just got a phone installed. No, well, you guys coming in for breakfast? Give us an hour or so. That's fine. We won't be open for a couple hours at least, so you can have the place to yourselves. Sounds good. See you in a bit. Later. There followed one of the few arguments we ever had over use of the shower. We normally avoided this argument by getting up at different times. This time I won because it was my apartment, but then I felt guilty, so I hurried. After several minutes of hot running water, we were all prepared to be civil to each other and agreed that breakfast at Feng's would be a good thing. Tom even seemed a little happier. I think the phone cheered him up in some strange, unfathomable way. On the way over, I thought about trying to figure out an alternative route that didn't take us past Le Bureau. It wouldn't be all that hard, just an extra block down to Leduc to Pompidou, then up Valois. But it would be annoying, and maybe it was silly. And then it came to me that Susie had helped me find the apartment, so perhaps it wasn't a coincidence that we had to walk past the place every day. I kept these thoughts to myself, but they were disturbing. In spite of the wasted time, it still lacked half an hour of Feng's 11 o'clock opening when we arrived at the door. Fred greeted us with, "Good morning, gentlemen," and he let us in. "We have presents for you." We stopped and looked at each other. "Presents?" ventured Jamie. "Courtesy of Mr. Feng himself," said Fred. We trooped in hesitantly and saw Rich, Eve, and Libby staring solemnly back at us. On the table behind them was the largest collection of firearms I've ever seen in one place at one time.
Wow.
Jamie spoke for all of us. Holy shit. And that, ending the chapter, is a perfect place and time to end our reading for today. Oh, exciting. Some big stuff happened tonight. We again found out about Monsieur Rudd. I have finding out that Billy was the one who was supposed to be killed in the shooting. Finding out the truth about everyone who works at Feng's, the non-musicians. Shit's getting real, you guys. All right. Well, thank you everyone for tuning in. I hope you guys are having fun. Enjoying the story and all that. One of my favorite things about sci-fi books is sort of thinking of them as not predicting the future, but as like an alternate timeline branching off from when the book was written.
Yeah.
Because if you try to think of it as actually predicting the future, then you just laugh because you're like, right. You know, the Back to the Future 2 was set in like 2018, I think, right. You know, and we do not have like magic
hoverboards.
We don't have hoverboards, first of all, and people have been working so hard. We don't have shoes that lace themselves or self-fitting clothing or tiny pizzas that grow to large pizza size in the oven. Sum total of things I remember about that movie.
Mm-hmm. The important stuff.
Yeah. And it doesn't look like the future via the 80s. But anyway, also, isn't Also, Blade Runner is set in 2019,
Oh,
I think, as well. So that's another good one.
that would be much more worth watching.
Yeah, that one, and definitely we don't have just all of the things in that movie except for noodle trucks. We do have noodle trucks. Anyway, yeah, it's kind of fun to look at it as like a like what direction it goes in. Like I just remember there was this sci-fi novel I read when I was in high school or college, probably written in the 90s. That was a character is invited to do something and makes an excuse saying, "Oh, there's a TV show I want to watch." And someone replies, "Why don't you just call your VCR and tell it to record it?" And I'm like, "Oh, so close. So close." Except for VCR. The idea of like being able to control your home electronics from another location, good. Yeah. Being able to record TV shows, watch them later, totally. Although we don't really record shows so much as they're just available for us to watch whenever. Right. We did have DVR for a while. Yeah. I think when I read this book,
TiVo was a thing.
And TiVo was a thing, yes. But yeah, the idea of calling it like, oh, so close. Apparently in this timeline, VCR is just got better, but we're still VCRs. Anyway.
Why not? I mean,
maybe in that year, I think they said VCR, not.
I mean, that's part of the point of
no, that's right.
Steampunk is that science fiction doesn't have to be future.
Right. Yes.
It doesn't.
It can be an alternate timeline. Yeah.
It just means science fiction.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
well, and it's
some vague.
People usually said it in the future because they like the idea of you could imagine this could be the future.
Yeah.
But when you read things later,
yeah,
when they're first written, often they do seem very like, wow, this could be what our future turns out to be. But yeah, when you read them later, it's not usually. You are often already in the future that they were predicting.
Yeah.
And no one can actually accurately predict the future as much as the tabloids would like to suggest. So, it's fun.
I feel like reading science fiction would be less fun if it were.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't need to be accurate. It just needs to be interesting.
Yeah. The whole point of science fiction, at least, unless you're Jules Verne's, in which case the point of science fiction is to talk about science.
Yeah.
But most of the point of science fiction is to talk about the greater human issues and how those remain the same across time and space.
I think good sci-fi is a balance between taking a future setting to kind of reveal the issues of the day and also going like, oh, check out this cool thing I designed.
Yeah.
Get this. What if hoverboards? That'd be pretty cool. I think that you have a balance of both, and that's the best.
And not doing the George Lucas thing where it's just setting it in space is just an excuse to not have people wearing underwear.
Well, except for them. Yeah, except for them. Although this is obviously not, this book is not really much of there's very few things that are actually like, ooh, cool, future thing, right? Like that phone device that they have, their like phone set, is the most high-tech thing we've seen in this book so far.
Pretty much, yeah. We don't really see a lot about weapons, though. I mean, he says he's not a gunman, so they could be very high-tech guns. We don't know.
I don't think that they would be, though. It just doesn't fit the rest of the universe,
Yeah.
Anywho. That's it for tonight. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening. Check links down below for if you want to tip me or if you want to check out my music or you want to check out my audiobook. Check out the playlist that I'm making for the songs mentioned in the book if you're curious about the music in the book. I hope at least somebody is listening to them because I'm spending quite a lot of time on it. Luckily, I don't think any music was mentioned in the last couple chapters, except the ones in the chapter heading, so I don't have to go like paging through the book looking for them. I should assign someone to write down the songs every time I mention them, and then they can just give me the list. Anyway, thanks everyone, and I will see you on Monday. Enjoy the weekend off. Sorry for the big cliffhanger right before the weekend, but what are you going to do? No concert this weekend. There will be a concert next weekend. In the next day or so, I will be posting a link or a page for the concert next weekend on the YouTube. Also, I will be making pages for the whole next week of this stream. I forgot. I meant to do it today, but I got busy with work. So, anywho, that's it. That's all I have to say. Good night.